Florian Jaeger. The name became a rallying cry within the Me Too movement, and that association sent the University of Rochester into crisis mode. Professor Jaeger was accused of dating and sexually harassing students, but the university determined he did not break any policies and he remains a professor there. The scandal resulting in a nearly $10 million settlement for the accusers in 2020. And then, barely a whisper, the story buried under the weight of the pandemic. But through our reporting, we learned the settlement did not bring an end to this case, the impact still being felt by many in different ways. This is a piece about the aftermath, and it includes an exclusive interview with Florian Jaeger in his first television appearance. Former University of Rochester President Joel Seligman recently published a new book, and at the end, it has something of a hidden chapter, or at least a hidden year. The title is 12 Great Years, but tucked away in the last few pages is his take on 2017, his 13th and final year as president. A decade prior to that hidden year, 31-year-old Florian Jaeger splashed onto the scene as an assistant professor inside U of R's renowned Brain and Cognitive Sciences department. Brash and brilliant, Jaeger developed a reputation that years later fueled allegations of sexual harassment. This is the case that flung U of R into the center of the Me Too movement. It's also what defined Seligman's final year and prompted him the day after he resigned to tell me this.
This matter, to some degree, was tried in the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion is very different than due process.
Words that former U of R professor Jessica Cantlon, one of several who complained about Jaeger's behavior towards students, resents to this day.
That hurt our credibility, and it also made women who have experienced sexual harassment or assault very nervous about coming forward.
If anyone thought this story was over and done with, Cantlon's comment reveals it most certainly is not. Not for the accusers, not for Seligman, who laments unfinished work at U of R, and not for Florian Jaeger, who, for this piece, agreed to his first TV interview.
Now I am a persona non grata.
Widespread coverage of this story stopped at the beginning of the pandemic, but we discovered almost everyone involved is still living out their own hidden chapter. This includes Jaeger's colleague and domestic partner, Chigusa Koremoto.
One way to put it is that it's a never-ending nightmare.
A quiet, painful search for an end. That's what this is. And to tell you about it, we have to jump back to the start, to 2007, when Jaeger first arrived on the U of R campus. What followed was detailed in the $4.5 million investigation led by famed former federal prosecutor Mary Jo White. In it, she found between 2007 and 2013, Jaeger did have consensual, intimate relationships with several students, though he was not their advisor or primary supervisor. But at that time, a professor dating a student was actually allowed at U of R. So the White report concluded Jaeger did not violate U of R policy, while adding the relationships were ill-advised and contributed to Jaeger's reputation as a womanizer, and they were eventually used by Cantlon and others to back up their claims.
This was a pattern of behavior that extended over many years. He announced at department events that faculty wanted to have sex with a particular woman student. He talked about students' breasts, legs, bodies with faculty members.
White agreed with Cantlon that because of a combination of Jaeger's harsh and demeaning language, flirtatious behavior, use of sexual innuendo, promiscuous reputation, open relationships with students, and blurring of social and professional lines, several female graduate students avoided him and, as a result, missed out on educational opportunities.
Florian's behavior over this period of many years really corrupted the whole educational program.
But the report also emphasized there was no unwanted touching and argued Jaeger was not a sexual predator as alleged, calling a number of the complaints exaggerated or misleading, and concluded that even when taken all together, his behavior did not rise to the level of sexual harassment.
She called the behavior inappropriate, again, within 2007 to 2010 timeframe. What's your take on that?
Did I do something that caused discomfort to other people, right? And then I'd say that that's bound to have happened. I think the evidence is clear on that. Do I regret that? Yes. Right? That was never my intention, which, again, some people don't believe, but I can only say it wasn't my intention.
Jaeger's boss called him in when the first official complaint was lodged in 2013 by a graduate student who said, among other things, Jaeger took her picture without her permission.
This was the first time that I heard about any such allegations. The first reaction is shock. the second reaction is trying to understand. So I remember asking Greg for some clarifying information.
After that, things appeared to settle in the department, with White noting Jaeger's improved behavior. No dating students, no evidence of offensive language. Then, in 2016, Cantillon and former U of R professor Richard Aslan submitted their complaints against their colleague. The university investigated and, as noted, determined Jaeger did not break U of R's relationship rules, or any rules for that matter. Unhappy with that and the fact Jaeger was granted tenure during the appeals process, Cantillon, Aslan, and others went public through an article in Mother Jones magazine. Here's Aslan in September of 2017.
I felt it was a fundamental failure to protect the students at the university.
A few weeks later, with a tweet, actress Alyssa Milano breathed life into the Me Too movement. For those looking to apply the hashtag to fresh stories, the Jaeger case had surfaced at the perfect time, and it caught fire. Before year's end, Cantillon and Jaeger's other accusers found themselves on a list with Me Too notables, all named Times Person of the Year. And in the same breath, people were now mentioning the names of Harvey Weinstein and Florian Jaeger.
You don't have to be Harvey Weinstein to have done something wrong that discriminates against women, students at a school.
The wave crested and broke over Jaeger and, by extension, Kurumada.
Everything was crumbling down, my research wasn't going well, and then we had to spend so much time and an emotional effort to deal with the situation.
Despite this, Jaeger says he stuck by his marching orders from U of R to remain silent. Weeks later, the White report dropped. That's when Seligman let loose on Cantillon, Aslan, and their group.
Who have made it unequivocally clear that they're trying to extract from the university a huge financial settlement.
That group did sue U of R, claiming the White report, which had been ordered and paid for by the university, was part of a larger effort of retaliation. A federal judge gave them a big win when he declined to dismiss a number of claims, like retaliation, saying he saw enough to at least send the case to trial. And in March 2020, right as the pandemic took hold, a settlement was reached, and the 9 who sued received $9.4 million.
I did feel a sense of justice, I think, by the end, but it's not complete.
Cantillon felt forced to leave U of R, and Aslan had retired earlier than he had hoped. Jaeger stayed, saying moving was impossible even if he wanted to. Though the department has calmed, Jaeger says he still struggles to find grant money, and the case occasionally flares on campus, usually with a protest, but his office has also been vandalized with messages calling him a sexual predator and telling him to resign because he sexually assaulted women, something he was never accused of.
How about psychologically? I mean, how have you processed what's happened?
I've spent years thinking about this. It's with me almost every day. I'd say the biggest challenge there at the beginning was disentangling the made-up, utterly false, outrageous stuff, removing all of that and kind of still trying to say, okay, but clearly I'm not flawless, right? Clearly there's stuff I've done that has upset people. So what are those things, and how can I kind of disentangle that BS from the real stuff, the concerns that I would like to address?
People don't remember anything about actual allegations, anything about what was actually found in the investigations, but the term sexual predator is the only thing that people remember now, right? And people approach this topic assuming that there must have been something that supports this term, that warrants the use of this term.
A hidden chapter filled with resentment, yes, but also, as Seligman displays in a recent interview, reflection.
I wrote in the very last page of the book that Desiderata is a favorite poem, and it concludes with the line, with all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. And I believe that.
And despite the fallout, notably absent, at least for Aslan, is regret.
These cases never end well in the sense that everyone ends up being negatively affected by it. But I want to reiterate the fact that if we just look the other way, these kinds of cases will continue.
The University of Rochester hopes they don't, especially within their community, which is why they've updated their policies. U of R's interim chief diversity officer, Adrian Morgan, says they've tightened up their faculty-student dating rules, increased the number of investigators ready to look into claims of misconduct, and streamlined the complaint process. Much of that change, she says, a direct result of the Jaeger case.
We've learned a lot from that instance, and again, really taking this very seriously by really taking a deep dive and an examination into what the policy was then and how we needed to revise it and strengthen it as we move forward. Beyond this hidden chapter and into a new one, tied to the past, but not bound by it. If you'd like to learn more about Seligman's book, the whole book, including those first 12 years, you can see my interview with him right now over in the Adam Interviews section of RochesterFirst.com.